Morning, everybody. Thank you for rounding out our GPS session this time. So we're really glad that you're here, and hopefully you will find this information useful and meaningful. So we have a very full agenda. I'm going to get right to it. We're going to start with everybody's favorite part of GPS, which is rumor lane. And we had 70 questions posted this time. So, that really tells us that folks are seeing this way of communicating as useful and that they feel like they're getting their questions answered. I do want to remind everyone that they don't have to wait to GPS, that they have their managers, directors, their VPs. Certainly feel free to even email me if you have a question. We don't want you to have to wait, but we're glad that we're getting so much response to GPS. Then I'm going to spend some time on our 2017 priorities. Hopefully everybody is familiar with our Destination 2020. We certainly have it on many, many walls and units. But the senior leadership team really wanted to spend some time this year, ahead of our fiscal year, focusing on what is the priority for 17. What do we need to get done? We know this is going to be an extremely big year for Dayton Children's, as we've been saying, a historic year, a transformational year, any way you want to call it. What do we need to get done in 17 to make that successful? So I'll spend some time on that. I'm going to turn it over to Jane, and she's going to speak to you a little bit about Magnet and what nursing's priorities are going through fiscal year as well. Some really interesting information that her team has been looking at in terms of who's inpatient at Dayton Children's. What makes up our inpatient population, both demographically, age-wise, diagnosis, and so forth. And she's going to start by sharing some of her reflections of the first 9 or almost 10 months that she's been here at Dayton Children's. So let's get started with rumor lane. So we had lots of questions related to the compensation studies. So I'm going to sort of group that together and give you some overall information about what was the results, what came out of it, and so forth. So we looked at every single position at Dayton Children's other than the senior leadership team. So that's over 2,000 individuals and their positions were looked at or reviewed as part of this really comprehensive, not to overuse the word, but historic review of compensation here at Dayton Children's. And we learned a lot of things. As I said, when we were talking about compensation at our last GPS, we knew it was going to have a variety or a variable impact on our staff. We knew that there would be some folks that were in positions that were frankly significantly underpaid according to the market, that there were going to be folks that were basically where the market told us they should be, and there were going to be some even that might have been above the market. And so how are we going to take all that information and apply it in a way that was positive for all? So one of the principles that we used in implementation is that nobody would receive less pay and that everybody would see an increase in their base pay. So regardless of what the market told us, every employee at Dayton Children's saw a 2.5% increase in their base pay. Okay. Now, then from there, we made some significant adjustments in some places, and some places some less than some adjustments, but not huge. The total impact of this compensation study is $9 million. So it's a very
hard to understand her. Yeah.
Okay. We have some folks that are streaming in, so do I need to do anything different?
Nope.
Okay. So it was a huge investment in our most important resource, which is all of you. So we're making some pretty large investments in facilities, but what was clear to us is that if we weren't investing in our caregivers, and every employee at Dayton Children's, everybody who receives a paycheck from Dayton Children's is a caregiver. So if we weren't making an investment in our caregivers, then these other investments really weren't worth what we were doing. So $9 million impact. Some of that's related to what would have been our annual increase. Those usually cost us about $3.5 million. And the rest of that is our market adjustments. So other questions we received were around shift differential. So we were asked, are we going to be doing away with shift differential? And the answer is no, we are not doing away with shift differential. It is a common practice in most hospitals. But we are taking a look at the practice as well as other sort of sort of ancillary pay practices. We did a deep dive into base pay, and now we're taking a look at some of these other pay practices so we can make sure that they too are reflective of market and understanding what other hospitals are doing. Are we consistent throughout the hospital? Another question related to retention bonuses and plus-ups and some of those other specialty pay practices. So the reality is going into 2016, this particular busy season, we probably weren't at the staffing level we needed to be. And then we had a pretty busy season. And so we made heavy use of retention bonuses and plus-ups and other types of pay to encourage folks, incentive pays to encourage folks to come and work. And we are extremely appreciative of the incredible effort that we saw amongst staff. It was tough. It was a really long period of time that we were asking folks to work a lot of hours. So in the future, with the adjustments we've made in base pay, and hopefully what Jane's going to talk about staffing when she speaks, we won't have to make as heavy use of those specialty pays, but I think we'll always probably have to. The reality is when you have a hospital that in the summer could have inpatients as low as 65 or 70, and in the winter could go as high as 150 or above, it's never going to be a perfect match between staffing and patients. So we're always going to need to be flexible and responsive to the market to make sure we have enough staff to take care of our kids. So that's the compensation study. There's other questions I'm happy to answer them at the end of our session today. The first question on our board here is, will there be a buyback program for old logo wear? So does everybody like the new logo? Hopefully you do. We're excited about it. And certainly wearing it is very important to us. You are our best ambassadors, our best billboards, and we want to see our logo out. We also know you've made a lot of investment over the years in Dayton Children's logo wear. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to have a period of time that we're all going to probably be seeing both logos. And then at some magic date that marketing hasn't given us yet, but before the new tower opens, they will tell us, and all of that logo wear, all of the things that we have that say Dayton Children's, cups, thermoses, lunch boxes, whatever they may be, we're going to ask you to bring them in. And we're going to have a big pile. And for each piece of logo wear that you bring in, we're going to give you a discount on new logo wear. But in addition, we're going to give 2 free pieces to everybody, as well as a new badge. Okay, so everybody will get 2 free pieces. But eventually, at some point in time, we really want it all gone. And the reason we do is when we did our branding study, what we saw was that there's a sense that we're not always consistent, right? Consistency, people expect we want to provide that highest level, exceptional service all the time. And one of the ways that people judge that is, are you consistent? And we have lots of different ways of recognizing Dayton Children's out in the community. We are the Children's Medical Center of Dayton. We're Dayton Children's. We're Dayton Children's Hospital. We've got the logo onto the side. We've got the logo on top. We've got it all. And that just doesn't send the message of consistency that we want to send. So very important, and we will keep you up to date on what that magic date is. Next question is it true that Huber Heights will have an urgent care within 6 months? We did shell urgent care in at Huber Heights. We know that it's wanted in that market. Not exactly sure when we will be putting it in. There's a number of reasons for that. One is that we are very focused on Springboro and making sure that we open Springboro in an exceptional way. There's a lot of moving parts there, and we want to, when we talk about the priorities, it's all about making sure that everybody knows what the highest priority is, and right now it's opening Springboro. But we do anticipate at some point that Huber will open. The other reason we're delaying a little bit is that our emergency department group has become part of a much larger entity called Team Health. They're a national emergency department group. And so they're in the process of some transition. They will be taking over the management of the Springboro urgent care. And before we start opening other urgent cares, we will need to get those systems right and in place. So the next question dovetails, and that is the urgent care in Springboro closing when the new ED is built? I'll kind of answer that. No, it is not. The Team Health folks will be taking over the management of urgent care, but we will keep it open. The families of that service, part of our service area, are used to having urgent care, and we don't want to take that away. Additionally, we know that emergency departments are more expensive, and we don't want to drive folks to a more expensive option than they need to be in. So urgent care will remain open. keep hearing that nursing will switch over to uniforms similar to dietary and housekeeping. Is this true? Don't have an answer for you on that yet. We are looking at it. We spent a lot of time on the aesthetics of the new tower, on the colors and the icons, and there is some thought that we'd like our nurses to be also wearing those same colors. Also, back to that consistency discussion I just had. What we know is that our parents and our kids oftentimes respond very positively to the colorful scrubs and the characters and so forth, but it doesn't really lend to that consistency, that subliminal message of consistency. And also, uniforms can help them identify who's who, right? And when you're in the hospital, sometimes it's hard to know who's who. So for that reason, too, we're looking at it. But there's been no decision, and there will be a team in nursing that looks at it, but we will make a decision prior to moving into the tower. Are we planning to change our insurance plan next year? The deductible creates a financial hardship to the point that I feel like I cannot go to the doctor. Well, it's probably no more concerning question we got than that one, because we absolutely do not want anyone who works with children to feel that they cannot go to the doctor. If we were having this town hall in any company in this country, I would suspect this question will come up, because managing healthcare for employers and for employees is a never-ending challenge, right? The costs keep going up for everybody. The choices seem to get bigger. The complexity of what we're doing gets more detailed, and so it's just a challenge. We are taking a deep dive into our benefits as well. Just like we did with the comp study, we're doing that with our benefits to understand where we stand in the market. What does it cost our staff, all of you, compared to other places, to try to understand where we are. Our goal is to keep these costs down. Our goal is not to see them continuing to go up. And I just want to take a little moment to remind you what we have here, and I'm just going to use the family plan for a minute. So our family plan deductible is $10,000. And when somebody sees that, they think, wow, that is really a lot, and it is. But I just want to remind you that we do provide $2,000 in your HSA in order to reduce that cost to you. And then if your family were to have that full $10,000 expense, the hospital will give you another $4,000 towards that deductible. So of that $10,000 deductible, if you were to spend it all, the hospital will contribute $6,000 to that. That's complicated. So right there, we know that we have some challenges because it's confusing. And you don't really pay attention a lot to these issues until you need them, right? Unless you're using your health plan, you don't really understand it. I always think the best person to ask questions about is somebody who has a lot of health issues that they're dealing with the plan a lot, because they understand it. We're going to look at it. We're going to do our best to keep this cost under control. Why is there so much concern about growing our South service area when there's so much growth that could be made in the North market? Well, there's a number of reasons why we're very focused on the South market. And the first is that's where the growth in kids is. Kids under 4 years old particularly. We've seen a 5% growth in kids under 4 years old in that area. You'll hear later, that's a lot of our inpatients. So we need to make sure that we're providing services where there's growth and where there's concentration of kids. So that's number one. Number two is the payer mix. So in that service area, about 60% of the families have private insurance. So why does that matter to us? Because we're going to take care of every child. It doesn't matter what their payer source is. We're going to take care of them in the same excellent way. Well, for every 1% improvement in our mix between insured and Medicaid, it's $1 to $2 million to the hospital. And that $1 to $2 million enables us to take care of every child that comes in our doors. It enables us to be out in the community doing prevention work, work in the homes and schools. Doesn't pay, but we need to do it. It's part of our mission, right? Our mission is to improve the health status of all kids, regardless whether they're in the hospital or out of the hospital. And so we need those funds. And so having that improved payer mix is very helpful. And then third, we've got really stiff competition in the South market. There's no question about it. Cincinnati is a stiff competitor, and we need to be in that market with all of our services, providing an exceptional service, because our families want to stay with Dayton Children's. We know that from survey. They want to stay here. They want to stay in our network. But we need to be convenient. We need to have great access, and we need to have an exceptional patient experience. So That's really why we're so focused on the South Market. But that said, we are in the process of developing a strategic plan for the North. We do want to do more up north. We want to concentrate our services better up north. And so by the end of the year, we should have a good plan about where we need to be in the north side of our service area. Previously, it was shared that there wasn't really a need for an inpatient psychiatric ward. Don't we need to try to get these children help to prevent something from happening? So mental health continues to be a huge issue facing us, facing this area, facing the country. Probably a week doesn't go by that we don't hear about something terrible, and then we hear that at the root of it was a mental health problem. We certainly know that these issues don't start all of a sudden in adulthood, that they have many times their genesis as children. So 3 years ago, we rolled out our Center for Mental Health Resources, and we have grown our mental health services significantly. We'll see over 3,000 children in psychiatric visits this year. 4 years ago, we saw 0. Grace Matson is here. Her position didn't exist here. She's our medical director of psychiatry. That position did not exist at Dayton Children's before Grace came. So we're growing, but what we felt was that we should focus on our outpatient, our ambulatory strategy. We could take care of more kids. We could help more families. We have our center. We have our mental health resource connection. That's a phone line. Parents come to their pediatrician. The pediatrician recognizes a mental health problem. He refers that family to Mental Health Connection. One of our psychiatric social workers calls that family, understands what their concerns are, and refers them to community resource. It's been a huge, huge help to families, to our physicians, our pediatricians in the community. We receive between 250 and 300 calls a month. That just gives you the sense of the scope. I don't think any of us probably have somebody in our family that isn't struggling, or our extended family or friendship group with mental health. I certainly know I do. So why don't we have an inpatient unit? Well, last year we saw about 250 children inpatient with a mental health diagnosis. And they stayed on average about 20 hours. We started our constant attendant program this year so we can move those children out of our ICU. But they're still in the hospital. But it's simply just not enough for an inpatient unit. And so we'll continue to watch it. But we don't think at this point we have enough. We know we don't have enough. Probably 1 or 2 children a day isn't enough for a unit. And then last question, is it true that Wally B. Bear will no longer be used? So how many people in the room know why Wally is named Wally? Anybody? One. Okay. Wallace Taggart, right. Wallace Taggart was one of the founders of Dayton Children's. He was a pediatrician. The Taggart entrance is named after Dr. Taggart. But Wally is a koala bear, which are not native to Dayton, Ohio. We've spent a lot of time with the new patient tower really thinking about making it a uniquely Dayton Children's Hospital. And so our theme is things that fly, and Wally doesn't fly either. So Wally's going to graduate and go back to New Zealand, where koala bears are from. We're going to have a going away party for him, but we won't be using him anymore in our marketing and educational materials. So that was Rumor Lane. If you didn't see your specific question, it will be posted on Focus, and hopefully we'll get it answered there. All right, we're going to talk about priorities. Here we go. Destination 2020, just to remind you, our 4 focus areas, the patient experience, right services, physician integration, and care alliances. On the right here are those metrics that will tell us that we have succeeded, we have arrived at a wildly successful future. They start with 99th percentile in employee engagement or caregiver engagement, because nothing else I'm going to talk about will we achieve if we can't get to that level of engagement. If you all do not feel that level of excitement and engagement and commitment, that puts us in the 99th percentile. Next is the patient experience. You have to be in the 99th percentile of the patient experience, because that is our competitive advantage. That's what our size really enables us to excel at. Thirdly, or really second, was harm, right? 0 harm, because we couldn't come up with any other goal but 0, right? That's our perfection is our goal when it comes to safety. Next is market share growth and dominance. We talked about that already, and the importance. If we're not growing, we're not vital. We have to grow. And then finally, we want to be a leader in value creation because just like I talked about when it came to our own health plan, our families are paying a bigger and bigger portion of the bill, and we want to be able to provide what we provide, high quality, fabulous patient experience, and bring down their costs. So that's value creation. So what does that mean for 2017? Those are pretty audacious goals. I'm absolutely confident that we will achieve them. But we have to stay focused on results. Results are absolutely critical, and every year we have to move down that path. So what do we need to accomplish in 2017? Well, we spent a lot of time at the senior leadership team level, and I have to tell you, this is really hard. I'll let you in on a secret if you haven't figured that out about me, and that I want to get everything done today. And so it's hard for someone like me to focus. But if we're going to be successful, we absolutely have to focus. So this is what we felt as senior leadership team were our top priorities for 2017. And these are priorities that cut across the entire organization. You may have a specific priority in your own department as well, but this is those priorities that are cross-cutting. First is the opening of the Orthopedic Sports Medicine Center and the rest of the Specialty Care Center at Springboro. Will open in September and October of this year. As I said before, it has to be exceptional. We have incredible competition. We have to be better than them. We're already better than them in my book, but we have to show our families that we're better than them. Next is the opening of the emergency department. That will open in January of 17. Again, our families, we want to create an experience there that measures the quality of what we have here and even ramps up our experience to a higher level. Third, the patient tower, a small thing, opening in June of 17. So we have to open that. We have to open it safely. We have to open it on time, on budget, and we have to make sure that as we move into it, that we've thought differently maybe about our inpatient spaces. And so Jane's going to speak to you about that. Consumer-driven technology. At our last GPS, we talked about the millennials and how tethered they are to their handheld devices and how more and more there's an expectation of accessing healthcare digitally. So we have to roll out, whether it's MyChart, online scheduling. And I'll just give you an example of the power of this type of access. So at Urgent Care, we've rolled out something called Clockwise. Rolled it out about a month ago, maybe. And now, rather than coming in and waiting or being in the parking lot waiting for Urgent Care to open, our families can go online, either through a handheld device or on their computers, and see what the wait is, and see when they could come in to minimize their wait. And then when they come in, their wait is dramatically less. They can see where they stand on a board. They can see their identifier. And the whole process of accessing urgent care is easier, faster, and more convenient. So that's the kind of thing that digital technology can do for us. Clinically integrated network. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this right now, just to say that this is really a supercharged way of us interfacing with our pediatricians. Remember, one of our four pillars is physician integration. So how do we better communicate, have better care protocols, all those relationships between the hospital, specialists, community physicians work even better for our families. Re-engineering the referral process. So it's not always easy to refer to Dayton Children's. Back to that consistency word. In many cases, it's a different referral process for each of our clinics. Physicians don't necessarily know who to call and what's the fastest way to call. There's different procedures. Families can't often refer to us directly, and sometimes our families want to make appointments directly. Really looking at the whole back end of access is what this is about. And there's a big team that's going to work on this, and we think we're going to create something incredibly special. But most importantly, we have two audiences here. We have our physicians, our pediatricians that refer to us, and we have families that want to access us. How do we get it right for both of them? And get paid. That's an important part of it as well. New specialty service growth. We're going to grow more specialties. We're going to be growing urology. We're going to be growing ENT. We're going to continue to grow our mental health specialties, and just looking for ways that we can continue to grow those new specialty services. The patient experience bundle. We've spoken about that. This is predominantly an inpatient nursing focus. Getting that consistent, hardwired, every family getting that same bundle is extremely important to moving our scores and having each family, every family, not 90 out of 100 or 99 out of 100, but every family getting that same consistent experience. The ambulatory consumer experience is something we've talked a lot with you all about, the inpatient experience. But the reality is more kids see us outpatient than they ever will inpatient. So what makes a exceptional experience in the ambulatory setting? It's a little different. In the ambulatory setting, a lot of times it's really between how well does the clinic operate, did I get in, it's procedures, but it's a lot that relationship between the doctor and the patient, right? In the inpatient setting, certainly the doctor has an important role, but the nurses play a huge role, the respiratory therapist, the clinician. It's a bigger team. So really working with our physicians in this ambulatory experience to understand what makes an exceptional doctor's visit. And then finally, a clinical research center. Dr. Dubey, our new chair of pediatrics, is working to create a better platform for us to do more research. We have a lot of physicians and nurses and other clinicians that want to do research here at Dayton Children's, but we have to have support for that, right? You can't just say, okay, I want to do research, right? We have to support that, and Dr. Dubey is working on a great plan to do that. So that's a lot. It's a very, very aggressive plan, but we have been working extremely hard on making sure we have really good action plans. So you're going to be hearing through your VP, your director, your manager, as you prepare budgets, if you're involved in preparing budgets, this will really be the priorities that we focus on. So we wanted you all to understand that. With that, I'll turn it over to Jen. We have some folks who are streaming in, so we have to be on the microphone.
All right. Thank you, callers, for joining in. My name is Jane Gemeiner. I'm your Chief Nursing Officer, and you guys are doing a great job being on mute, so thank you very, very much. We are trying to record this, which will allow more people to even see it that cannot attend after this session. So it's great to have this audience on our last GPS session. So I wanted to give you some background of my first 9.5 months at Dayton Children's. And it has been an absolute privilege to be here. I'm driving about 3.5 more miles down the road. I spent the first portion of my professional life at a place called Miami Valley Hospital. So I came from the adult world to a very compassionate and caring pediatric world. And I don't want to misguide you. Miami Valley Hospital is a very compassionate and caring place. But as I've described, I think we take it up a notch about 300% in this environment. And why is that? Because of our mission. Our mission is the future of this community, the future of this region, the future of all the counties we serve. And to do that right, we have to be perfect 100% of the time. And that's a tall task. With children, there is no point of you have an opportunity to mess up a little bit. Because if you do that, you're harming that patient. And so we have to be on our game in a complete way every moment, every day. The other thing I have found in my experiences here is that the senior leadership team is extremely collaborative. Things are put on the table. They're hashed out. They are talked through. And as Debbie said, driving a 2017 goal list, and I am so impressed, it's April, and we already know what our priorities are for next fiscal year. That demonstrates, one, a lot of organization, and two, a lot of priority setting and focus to help us get our head around the next year that's coming ahead. The other thing I've been very impressed with is how collaborative the board is. They not only are collaborative, but the time they spend and invest in us, and that's volunteer time, is amazing. And I hope you all know how special that is for Dayton Children's. They are not only advocates at the meetings, which are kind of the forced events, but their volunteer time to attend events, to represent us, has resulted in Jenna working with the development team and Debbie's leadership to almost hit our goal of $25 million of money to be raised for our tower. That commitment is from that board being out in the community helping drive this organization where it needs to be. The other thing I've been really impressed with is how quick it is to be able to, if you have an idea, to bring it forward and implement it. And this, again, had a great career, but in a previous world, I was responsible with my last job for practice for the 5 hospitals in the home care agency in regards to nursing practice for Premier Health. When I wanted to try to implement a new policy or a change, I needed to work on 5 hospital consensus and to get home care involved if it was something that they did. We can do that a lot faster here. So some examples. This year with peak census, to see Jeff Delahunt and the Nutrition and Environmental Services team rally around what we needed for food, around what we needed for cleaning, responding to that. To see respiratory manage up to 90 patients in a day and 25 vents, and to be agile enough to really do that in a safe way is quite impressive. And the thing that I would like to not have is the exposure to new germs. I tended to be really healthy before I started here, and I have had strep throat. I ended up getting pneumonia. I had acute respiratory failure and spent a few days in the hospital. Ended up with pink eye over Valentine's Day. And so we're done with that checklist. You guys can take them, but what I learned from this and continue to learn is I wash my hands constantly. And usually in the winter, they're raw from washing them. But how important those continued basics are to keep yourself healthy and sleep and all of those things that go with it. We're going to do a little bit of talk about Magnet. In addition to the top 10 priorities, we have this key focus priority along with all the other things next year, and that is to be Magnet redesignated. And I'm going to do a stopping point because I was not here for the first Magnet designation in 2013. I have been a part of 3 previous designations at Miami Valley Hospital, and I know the heart and soul that pours into that. And this is where the thumbs come in, and we're going to do a couple audience participation questions. So here is my first question. Is Magnet nursing-centric, fact, or fiction? Is it all about nurses? It is about a 50-50, and the thumbs down are right. The red is right. Magnet is about all of us working together. Magnet is about the big 3. What our patients are experiencing in us from the care we provide, how safe the care is, as evidenced by hospital-acquired conditions. So Magnet expects us to outperform a national database for preventing pressure ulcers, bloodstream infections, catheter-associated urinary tract infections, falls, and many other things. We have to be better than the average. The other thing it expects is engaged employees. It expects that. So is that nursing-centric? No, that is much bigger than that. Here's the other one. Did Magnet cost in 2013 $250,000 for Dayton Children's? Fact or fiction? Again, about 50-50. That is fiction also. It actually cost Dayton Children's $75,000. That paid for surveyors to review our document and their review time. It also paid for them to come on site and do a survey for 3 to 4 days. I know 5 days is a bigger facility. This one's probably about 3 days. But that paid for those fees. Very similar to what we experience when Joint Commission comes in. We have fees associated with that. Very similar to when we have a level 2 trauma designation. There are fees associated with that. There was $250,000 donated by Twigs for us over time to pay for that service. So actually, those funds were paid for out of the development fund, and bless the Twigs team and that association for having that designation. Here's the next question. Are 13% of children's hospitals across the country magnet designated. Fact or fiction? That is a fact. So in Ohio, we are with Cincinnati Children's, Nationwide, Akron, and Dayton Children's. We want to be with those hospitals. And that is why we want to continue to sustain a magnet environment at Dayton Children's. This is what our team told us when we brought up the magnet words. They brought up excellence, quality, nursing, and they also brought up those words of waste and other things. So that is why we wanted to kind of talk about the fact or the fiction in regards to magnet. As I reflect on what the key priorities are in my first 9.5 months, I will tell you the thing that keeps me awake at most is staffing. One of the things we recognize, as Debbie pointed out, our census can fluctuate in the inpatient and observation world from 65 patients up to 150. We almost hit 155 one day this year. That means you got to have a lot of agility to take care of that flow through in patients. So one of the things we know, I don't know if anybody, I don't see anybody from NICU here, but NICU average daily census was budgeted at 22 patients this past year. They have been running 27 patients on average a day. Today they're around 33 to 34. When you have that demand in a unit that the care should be a 1-to-2 ratio the majority of time based on the needs of those patients, that impacts our staffing greatly. We have had nurses all over the organization focused on helping out NICU through this crisis. And they have been doing that for a period of time. So one of the first big things we've been doing is working with our nurse managers, our directors, is realigning what our core staffing needs to be. And that has been a major effort the last couple months. The other thing we've really focused in on is who are our patients. And I'm going to give you a little background on this. We have analyzed data with the great help of Jody Fitch, Jeff Routliff, and our data sources to say who are our patients and what kind of care are we currently giving to what age groups. What we know is 59% of our patients come in through the emergency department, and 56.4% of our patients are 4 and under. That means we are really, the voice for that child is the parent, because they are from a capacity and developmental stage, individuals that they can't process and problem solve what they need. We need to work with the parents to do that. So what we've learned from this is how important our patient experience is, not only with that child, but with the parent and the whole team that takes care of them. The other thing we found out is that 19% of our average daily census is pulmonary related. I think Sue could have told us that stat before we even ran the data. What that means is that is a lion's share of what we do, and we have to make sure as we develop a future state that we incorporate that into our future state. So we are taking all of this data and we are analyzing it by service and saying, we have this opportunity with this beautiful new tower to realign our space and our services based on the needs of our patients. Very similar to what Kate and Holly have done with the HEMOC area, we have combined those patients needing observation and those patients needing inpatient and take care of them on one unit. That means that the hematologist, the oncologist, and the nurses all have that skill set. So we're working on analyzing information to map that for our future state. The other thing we have to take into consideration is our new NICU was designed for 27 private rooms based on 15 years of data. Right now, that's our average daily census. So there, 40% of the time, we're above a census of 27. We've got to do something to help look at that as we move forward in our future. So all of those facts are kind of rolling into a design for the future. And as we know more about what that design is going to be, we'll be sharing that. But right now, we're still analyzing data. The other component regards to staffing that we will really be working on is we currently have a mandatory flex-up model. And I am working with chief nursing officers, not only in the state of Ohio, but I'm also reached out to CNOs across the country and asking for different alternatives to mandatory flex. So know that our staffing committee will be helping with us with solving that, and 55% of that team will be made up of staff nurses from the bedside to help us come up with solutions. It is a privilege having the opportunity to serve you. Happy Nurses Week, and happy week to everyone that helps support the nursing team. Thank you very much.
Okay, so it wouldn't be GPS if we didn't hear from the voice of the family. So we want to share a very special video with you.
A mother's intuition is something no one really can just explain. I felt like there was something wrong with my child, except I had no idea what that something was. So I brought him into Children's, and they immediately rushed him right back. Like, he didn't have to sit in the waiting room at all. They started running tests, and then the doctor that was on duty in the ER came in, and she told me that he had a tumor on his brain and that he was going to be admitted.
He was found to have what's called a medulloblastoma. It does involve a lot of therapy, including a pretty big surgery that he had up front that really has a lot of risk with it.
It went from, we're here at the emergency room, we don't know what's wrong, till hours later, he's in the middle of an 8-hour brain surgery. You kind of don't have time to sort out what you're thinking or how you're feeling, because you're just trying to get through it from one thing to the next, and just try and make sure that your baby's okay. His tumor was cancerous. He had 6 months of chemotherapy.
It's 5 different drugs each time, so a good bit. Makes you feel pretty sick and down at times, but he pulled through pretty well. Did great with it.
I was real comfortable with the care that he received, with the way that they treated him. He was, I say all the time, he was a part of their family. They fought over who would be his nurse, who would take care of him, because they say he was so easy to take care of, and he was. They have an end of chemo party, or a no mo chemo party. No mo chemo party. Silly string and cupcakes, and the doctors dance with Jules to celebrate the end of that stage of treatment. It was fun.
People ask all the time, how can you do pediatric oncology? It's got to be so sad. But then you see Jules, who's done with his therapy, who's dancing, who's happy, smiling, and you start looking forward to the future. It's not about chemotherapy anymore. It's not about the next surgery. Now it's about going on and living your life, and I think that's the important thing about it.